Hey everyone. So in my opinion, your best photos are dying on your hard drive, and I want to talk about how we might look at fixing that. As we know, a lot of us spend a lot of our time shooting, editing, and publishing the photos. But what do we do after that? Does it sit in a folder? Maybe it gets posted and then it's gone. And I also realized the fact that I was doing the same thing. As I've been doing photography for 4 or 5 years now, I've never actually printed any of my work off. I've only ever published it on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, the normal social media channels. As you all know, I shoot on a Fujifilm X100VI. Switched over from a Sony because I really like that film look and style that you get from one, using the camera, and two, using the film simulations within the camera and having your own custom ones. But then of course, it's a bit of a catch-22. I like the film look of the photos that I'm getting, but I'm never printing them out. They're only going on a digital platform, which in my eyes just doesn't really feel right. So that is why I have started printing my work using this little printer. And in this video, I want to explain more of the philosophical reasons why I'm using it and why I've started to use it, and less sort of specifications and less review of the unit. Just more as why, as a photographer, I think you should be printing your work, and why I think you're leaving your best work on your hard drive to die. So, first I want to cover why print. Printing for me, I think maybe does complete the process. It makes you certainly slow down and focus on what you're doing. You certainly have to be more intentional with the photos that you're printing. And it does force you to live with the photos that you're taking, whether you're putting them in a photo frame, an album book, whatever it might be. You're seeing them more on a day-to-day basis rather than uploading them to Instagram and maybe never really looking at them again. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think you should print everything that you take a photo of. My rule of thumb at the moment has been every time I go out on a trip, and by trip I mean anytime I'm intentionally taking my camera out with me for the purpose of capturing some photos for my portfolio, I'm selecting 3 photos from the files that I capture, and then that's what I'm choosing to print off. So it's kind of my top 3 photos of any particular trip. I bought a book. It's got roughly about 50 pages in, so obviously 52 weeks of the year. I'm going at least on one trip every 1 or 2 weeks. So that works out about right that I should fill up an album book once per year. Now, this small habit, I think, has changed the way I'm thinking about shooting and the way I am shooting, even though this is just a new habit that I've started. Because now I'm thinking beyond just the photo. I'm thinking about which ones are worthy of holding in my hands, which ones are really I want to display for people to see if they come and visit me. So obviously, to help me through this process and to help me get into printing, as I'm not someone who's ever printed my work off before, I wanted something that was easy, something I could print at home and help me complete the process. And that's where the Canon CP 1500 comes in. So let's get into a little review of this little printer. Now, this is not a professional printer, and it's definitely not marketed to be, but for a small compact printer at home, it does exactly what I personally need it to do, which is taking photos with no hassle. Taking photos, printing photos with no hassle. So the little printer prints 4x6 images, which is like postcard is the best way to think about it. Postcard size images, which in my opinion is a good middle ground between big prints and obviously them being too small, in my opinion. It connects wirelessly to your phone, and that's the way I typically will print off. I'll upload the photos to my phone because I'm not uploading them to social media anyway, and then I will just download and print my favorite ones onto this printer. You can also plug in a SD card if you wish to do it like that, although I wouldn't recommend doing that because the screen on the device, whilst it's pretty decent, obviously you can't check any of the photos in any great detail, and you can connect it through USB-C to your laptop if you prefer. But I've found the best image quality that I'm getting is from uploading with my phone. And for anyone really curious, I'll quickly go over. I normally shoot with a little border. I don't know why, I think it looks a bit more retro when you're shooting with a border around the image. I don't put any date on. I use the glossy preset. as I don't feel the other two modes really add anything to the image. Satin would be nice, but I think the paper is glossy anyway, so it adds a funny sort of finish onto it, so I just go with glossy anyway. And I don't add any sort of auto correction, so when you get this, it has the option of including auto correction when you're printing the photos. I decided not to include that, as I don't want this to decide what my colors are going to look like after the fact. But honestly, I have found that this printer has been the easiest and quickest way of getting my photos off my computer screen and into my hand, which is really all that matters at the end of the day. As someone who shoots in film simulations all the time, mostly in sort of classic chrome or Reala Ace, I have found that the colors do seem to transition surprisingly well, and was something that I was maybe concerned of watching a lot of videos where people take a lot of time fine-tuning their printers to the colors they see on the screen as what gets printed off in real life. I will say one thing, I have found that warmer tones don't seem to print off quite as well as you would expect, but for everyday people, this is something that you're really not going to notice, and it hasn't affected the prints that I'm getting or the quality whatsoever. And I also think that's maybe part of the charm, that again, it's part of the final process where, you know, taking it from what it looks like on the camera to what it looks like on your screen to what it finally looks like on your print is a process, and it would be a bit boring if it always looked the same throughout the whole process. So I think a lot of people might hesitate with a printer like this because of cost. So I now want to go into costings, and I don't think why it should be a reason or a barrier to entry, I should say, into why you shouldn't get this little printer. So let's talk about cost versus value. Let's be honest, we do spend thousands of pounds on cameras, lenses, and accessories. But I think we do hesitate when it comes to printing off our photos, especially when it becomes about 33 pence per photo to print off with this once you factor in ink and things like that. So in my opinion, that doesn't really make sense. Of course, printing isn't about the money. In my opinion, it's about the value that it adds to me and my work and my creativity, and to be honest, as a photographer, the invaluable nature of printing off my photos. Because of course, whilst everything is about money, realistically, it's about the value that it brings to you. And of course, you don't need a printer to really get started. In my opinion, what I would do if you're still hesitant about getting your own printer is I would make a file, and then every time you go out and shoot some photos, I'd put some photos, like I've done 3 per trip, into a folder and call it maybe ready to print. But at some stage, taking that folder and printing off those photos, as I think, again, it's just that extra step of the process, knowing that they are there ready to go and you don't have to trawl through, you know, thousands of files to find the ones that you did want to print in the end, and would be a good habit to get into, even if you're not thinking of picking one of these up. So how has printing changed my photography and my outlook on things? I think before I started printing, I was shooting quite a lot and not really looking at my work too closely, as I probably should have been. But printing definitely forces you to be selective, to actually slow down and engage with photography. You know, I'll be on Lightroom with hundreds of photos and I've got to pick 3 that I want to print off. That really makes you narrow them down, even more than you normally would if I was uploading to Instagram or Facebook or uploading them to YouTube within a video. I'm less bothered about the quality of the photos. But even though that the cost to value is, in my opinion, pretty negligible, still there is that cost there. So I want to make sure that every 33p that I do spend on a photo is certainly worth it. And I just don't think there's something more tangible than holding a photo that you've personally taken in your hand. I mean, I've looked at some of the photos that I've printed and gone, wow, I actually took that photo. Where just scrolling through them on my phone or going through them on Lightroom, you just don't get the same tangible feeling, I'd say. And to me, again, that's invaluable to my photography. So at the end of this year, I should have a lot of photos that I can go through in that photo album book and really fine tune and select which my favorite ones are. And more importantly, why are they my favorites? What was the film simulations I used? What settings did I use? Obviously, at the moment, I'm shooting with the Fujifilm X100 VI, but what cameras am I shooting with? All these little things that add up to create my sort of photography profile, and that's all thanks to printing off my photos with this little guy. So to try and wrap this video up in some sort of conclusion so you can go away and start thinking about maybe whether you should be printing some photos off as well, I think about the fact that photography does not end once you've taken the photo. It ends, of course, in my opinion, when you've printed it. Even if you don't buy a printer from this video, I would go out and look at any website that, you know, they're doing professional prints and just get a photo printed. You must have a favorite one that you'd love to get printed. And look at it, live with it, see how it changes, you know, put it on your desk, live with it for a few months and see if you still like it and appreciate it after all that time. Of course, let me know in the comments, do you print your work? Is this something that you've been doing for many years and that I'm just picking up on now and that's always been a part of the photography process? Or maybe share with me one photo that you would print off if you had the chance. And I think with that, I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see everyone in the next video.